Well, I'm not here. By here, I mean there. There, I mean at school. I'm home with a sick kid. You might be able to hear him coughing throughout this video. Also, something kind of weird happened to my face last night that's making it hard to, would be hard to come into school today. Anyway, I don't know. Sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and I think I woke up on the wrong side of my face. Anyway, a couple things. First of all, um, raise your hand if you got the reading done today. I'm serious. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. If you finish the reading, you're up to 140. Raise your hand. Okay, good. Um, thing number two, I can't see you. So a little bit of advice: just because someone on TV tells you to do something doesn't mean you have to do it. Anyway, I'm going to talk you through 120 to 140, and then you're going to get a little bit of reading time. You'll be up to 160 tomorrow. Sorry if this is distracting. It's really distracting for me, for me too. Why don't you open up your books, please, too? At the beginning of the reading today, Tea Cake is still gone after he had taken all of Janie's money and basically did exactly what she was afraid that he was going to. They'd recently gotten married, and then she wakes up the next morning, and the money that she'd brought along with her, the $200, um, was gone, and Tea Cake was, and he was gone for the whole day. If you look at page 122, 123, up to this point, Tea Cake's been a pretty good guy. He's treated her well. He's been nice to her. He's been affectionate, loving, all of that stuff. Everything that she's been. Sorry, I'm really having fun with this. Everything that she's been looking for, going back to Pear Tree stuff. But on 122, his explanation as to why he took this money is he said, when he found out how much it was, he was excited and felt like letting folks know who he was. He had never had his hand on so much money before in his life, and so he made up his mind to see how it felt to be a millionaire. Okay, now if you think about this is how he envisions wealthy people acting, and a lot of the things he's going to do in this story, which is funny. I mean, he's kind of joking to some extent, but the story he tells, a lot of the behaviors he does after he gets his money when he's trying to feel what it feels like to be a millionaire is reminiscent of the types of things that Joe Starks did. Okay, so I talked about this as an argument to Phoebe, and part of this is it allows an explanation as to why Tea Cake is the way he is. Tea Cake should be perfect guy for her, but there are things about him that are not. Um, so a couple of things he did. He at the bottom of 122, he stood in the door when he threw this big party for people, and paid all the ugly women $2 not to come in. One big Marini colored one was so ugly till it was worth $5 for her not to come in, so he gave it to her. So thing number one, when he acts like a millionaire, he's got enough money to determine even the attractiveness of the women who are around him. Then he gets a bunch of chicken, and there was one guy who kept wanting to eat all the gizzards. I've never eaten chicken gizzard before, but on top of 123, nobody else could pacify him, so they called Tea Cake to come and see if he could stop him. Tea Cake walked up to the man and said, "So what's the matter with you, know-how?" And then he beats him up. So he shows his manliness when he gets the money by beating people up. He knocked two teeth out, and then two other guys were fighting, and he made them kiss and make up, again showing masculinity and how big and tough he is. And then in 124, after he gets done with that story, doing all this stuff, then he says he had done found out how rich people feel, and he had a fine guitar and $12 left over in his pocket. So out of the 200, he's lost almost all of it, but came back with a guitar. And what his plan is that he is a gambler, and he didn't want to really tell Janie who he really was because he was afraid that, you know, he kind of knew her as the way a lot of people in town knew her as the mayor's wife, and so kind of high society and high class, and so he was afraid that she wouldn't be interested in him if she knew who he really was. Um, but she wants to come with him. She wants to do all the stuff he wants to do. And then on 128, this is a pretty big scene because it's possible to read this scene in two ways. So after this big event, and all the warnings from people about not becoming Miss Tyler, the woman who ran off with the young guy who stole all his money, top of 128, he says, "Put that $200 back with the rest, Janie. My dice. I no need no assistance to help me feed my woman. From now on, you're going to eat whatever my money can get you and wear the same. When I ain't got nothing, you don't get nothing." Janie says that's all right with me. On one way, you can read that as a really positive thing because he's kind of addressing all of her concerns. He said, we don't need to worry about your money. I'm not after it. I'm not going to take it. You put it back in the bank, and then we'll live off of my money. So that's one way to read it, and that's a nice way. But the other, a little bit more sinister way, is that as long as she has that money, there's no way he's ever going to be in control of this situation. Whoever's got the money runs the show, and as long as he doesn't have much and she has a lot, he never really will have much say in this relationship. So even just the words he uses, you're gonna eat whatever my money can buy you and wear the same. I mean, it's also kind of a command, basically, that I'm going to choose the clothes you wear and I'm going to give you the money, and you're not going to have anything unless I give it to you. So it's a little bit, you can kind of go back and forth in this. So TK behaves in some ways that are similar to previous husbands, but because he doesn't have the money that they do, he can't be as bad. So going back to Phoebe and Sam, maybe if Sam had more money, he would be a lot more the same way that Joe Starks is, and some of the other more negative dudes. When they get down to the muck, if you have your reading guide, I haven't really seen anyone using them, but if you have it and look on the map and kind of go south down from Orlando, you can see Lake Okeechobee. It's kind of the big lake in the middle of the southern, second bottom part of the map. And there's a little town there called Belglade, which is about where they went down to. And right off the bat on page 129, we get some information that Janie's going to do pretty well here. Janie's very connected to nature, going back to pear tree stuff, and you know, in the movie when she's always swimming in the magically clear southern Florida pool. But the descriptions of where they're going, to Janie's strange eyes, everything in the Everglades was big, big and new. Big Lake Okeechobee. I almost named my son Okeechobee just because it's fun to say. Big beans, big cane, big weeds, big everything. Weeds that did well to grow waist high up the state were 8 and often 10 feet tall down there. Ground so rich that everything went wild. Volunteer cane just taking the place. Dirt roads so rich and black that half a mile of it would have fertilized a Kansas wheat field. Wild cane on either side of the road, hiding the rest of the world too. People wild too. So not only nature goes crazy down there, so she'll go wild, but this is exactly what Janie's wanted. It's a whole bunch of kind of migrant workers coming from all over the place who they come because the money's pretty good, and they work hard during the day, and then they have a lot of fun at night. They go to the bar, they play music, they hang out, and Janie gets to do all this stuff, which is exactly what she was looking for, and exactly the type of thing that Joe wouldn't let her do. Um, on the bottom of 131, we get a little more information about this. All night now, the Jukes, and Jukes, Jooks, is like a juke joint, which would be like a bar they played music, which later became jukebox. Pianos living 3 lifetimes in one. Blues made and used right on the spot. Dancing, fighting, singing, crying, laughing, winning, losing love every hour. Work all day for money, fight all night for love. The rich black earth clinging to bodies and biting the skin like ants. They're going to have a really good time here. And on 132, we get a little more information about this, and this relates exactly to something that Joe Starks had said. Joe Starks had complained that all the people in Eatonville, they weren't saving money, they weren't being smart with it, and really all they wanted was a job and then a good meal and some place to lay down and fall asleep afterwards. And on 132, this is exactly what the people do there. Finally, no more sleeping places. Men made big fires, and 50 or 60 men slept around each fire. But they had to pay the man whose land they slept on. He ran the fire just like a boarding place, for pay. Nobody cared. They made good money, even to the children, so they spent good money. Next month, the next year were other times. No need to mix them up with the present. So T-Cake really enjoys it there because he gets to gamble a lot, and Janie likes it there because she gets to be with T-Cake and do all kinds of fun stuff. 133, we get another one of those situations which is a little bit weird, and you could read 2 ways. Previous husbands have just demanded she work. They said, you're going to be wherever I tell you to be. And on 133, T-Cake comes back from picking cucumbers and says, I have to tell you the real truth so you can know. Janie, I get lonesome out there all day without you. After this, you better come and get a job out there like the rest of the women, so I won't be losing time coming home. So he's saying, because I miss you, but he also said, you better come get a job like the rest of the women. So the way he phrases it, even though he's prefaces it by saying something nice, that I just want to be around you. That's why, so we can spend more time together. That's why I want you to be working with me. But he also says, you have to do this. He's not really giving her a choice. Going on a little bit, on 136, 137, we get the story of Nunky. Okay, now Nunky, my guess is Nunky. And maybe not literally know Nunky, but if you're dating someone, Nunky is that person who is always kind of flirting with your boyfriend or girlfriend, kind of being very playful and touching them and doing all the things, and it kind of makes you want to punch him in the face and then push him down a big hill into some water, and then they'll get wet down there. But beyond that, so Janie, at the beginning of this chapter, chapter 15 and 136, says Janie learned what it felt like to be jealous. Janie hasn't been jealous of any other of her two previous husbands. I mean, if either Joe or Logan was involved with Nunky, if Logan was involved with Nunky, she probably just would have thought it was funny. And if Joe was involved with Nunky, she wouldn't have cared because that might have meant she could get out of that marriage. But um, part of being in love with someone is the flip side of that, and there is some doubt, and there's some fear, and there's some jealousy, because if you didn't feel strongly about the person that you're with, you wouldn't feel those things. So one day she went to try to find Tea Cake and couldn't find him, and when she found them, on 137, he waved his hand toward the cane field and ran away. Jenny never thought at all. She just acted on feelings. She rushed into the cane about the fifth row, and she found Tea Cake and Nunky struggling. She was on them before either of them knew. So, now, imagine your boyfriend or girlfriend you find wrestling with this person, with this Nunky. How you would feel about that. They go back to their shack, and they fought on. So we're going to go from fighting to not fighting. You done hurt my heart. Now you come with a lie to bruise my ears. Turn go my hands. Janie seethed, but Tea Cake never let go. They wrestled on until they were doped with their own fumes and emanations, till their clothes had been torn away, till he hurled her to the floor and held her there, melting her resistance with the heat of his body, doing things with their bodies to express the inexpressible, kissed her until she arched her body to meet him, and they fell asleep in sweet exhaustion. That language, if you go back and look at what was going on with the description in the pear tree scene, that language is very similar. Okay, so this is, I mean, this shows that she's really loves this guy, because otherwise she wouldn't be jealous. And this is the type of passionate, loving relationship that she's always really wanted. 130, starting with chapter 16, and you didn't really need to go too far into this, just 2 pages, we are introduced to another character named Mrs. Turner. We got Mrs. Tyler and Mrs. Turner. Mrs. Turner is a lighter-skinned black woman who is racist against anyone whose skin color is darker than her own. Okay, and she's, as Janie's skin color is a little bit lighter too, she's trying to set Janie up with her brother in hopes that if they had kids, their skin color would be even lighter. So there hasn't been a lot of talk of racism in the book because Eatonville, there aren't any white people. But there's a little bit at the end, and it's I think more in there just to show how ridiculous racism is, and it shouldn't be happening, and a couple good examples of that. So that's about all I got for today. I'm gonna go try to fix my face, and I hope reading goes well. So up to 160 for tomorrow, and I will be back tomorrow, and I'll see you then.